Hi, everybody. Welcome back. It's Word Balloon, the comic book conversation show. John Suntress with you, and, this weekend was Batman Day, and as I observe most birthdays and holidays, I'm usually a day late with my observation, although I made a couple of comments, and also I posted a couple of YouTube shorts reflecting on Batman Day, so I hope you had a chance to check those out on YouTube or Facebook or Instagram, some of the other places that I've put them. But today I wanted to replay a fantastic interview that I did with actor and comedian Robert Wuhl. Now, Robert has had a very varied career, a lot of great movies. I'm a big fan of the movie that he made as well as starred in called Mistress with Martin Landau and Robert De Niro and Danny Aiello and Gene Smart, among others. But we talk about Batman 89. He was going to be at Terrificon that summer, a couple years ago, and I got the chance to meet him at the show. But before that, we did this wonderful phone conversation where he gave great stories about 89. Obviously gives it up to Tim Burton and his groundbreaking direction for the Batman movie, but had some great anecdotes about Nicholson and Keaton and the whole cast and just making the movie. Plus, we talk about other movies and, of course, this wonderful HBO TV show, Arliss. Really fun conversation, and this guy knows old Hollywood, so he immediately is a favorite of mine. I've always enjoyed his podcast in the past, and other times that he's had opportunities, even as a guest. I know when he used to be on Gilbert Gottfried's podcast, he, Gilbert, and Frank would tell fantastic anecdotes about old Hollywood. Just a vast knowledge of the subject, and something that he clearly loves. And I love talking to him. Robert Wuhl on today's Word Balloon. Coming soon to Kickstarter, it's The Legend of Kingdom Come. This feature documentary is an origin story about the beloved 90s-era graphic novel Kingdom Come, going behind the scenes and in the minds of its comic creators Alex Ross and Mark Waid. A whole list of comic creators talk about the genius of this great graphic novel. I'm on this documentary as well, I'm very proud to say, and I'm very happy to help spread the word. Keep watching for the Kickstarter campaign for this incredible documentary, The Legend of Kingdom Come. Word Balloon is also brought to you by my League of Word Balloon listeners. Those are my patrons at patreon.com/Word Balloon. You know, for 19 years I've been putting out Word Balloon and trying to give you the best in pop culture interviews, whether it's comic books, movies, television. I've been very fortunate to have some great people come on the show over the years, but I could use your help. I hope you'll consider subscribing to Word Balloon via Patreon, patreon.com/Word Balloon, and help the cause. Do you think Word Balloon is worth the price of a comic book a month? If you think so, if you can afford it, I would really appreciate the help. Word Balloon is free. It will always be free. But if you like what I do and you think enough of supporting me the way you support your favorite comic book creators, movie people, whatever, by buying tickets to their stuff, please consider supporting me via Patreon. Patreon.com/Word Balloon. Thank you, League of Word Balloon listeners. Robert Wuhl, welcome to Word Balloon. It's a real pleasure to have you on, man. I've been a longtime fan of your stand-up, your movies, your television specials, of course, Arliss. Congratulations on a great career. I'm looking forward to talking to you today.
I appreciate that. Thank you.
This year marks the 30th anniversary of the Tim Burton Batman movie with Michael Keaton. You played reporter Alexander Knox, and I got to ask you, how did you get the role?
I auditioned. My agent put me in touch with the casting director, who was the great late Marion Dougherty, who was the grande dame of casting directors. If you saw the HBO documentary Casting By, she was basically the first casting director. She gave people like Dustin Hoffman, Robert Duvall, Gene Hackman their first starts in like early television, and then she moved on to films, and she was the best, and she liked me. And I auditioned for her, and then a couple of days later, she brought me in to meet Tim Burton, and I auditioned for Tim, and I got lucky. What can I tell you?
Now, I know you are obviously a superhero fan, because I remember your stand-up, and you did a great bit that's on YouTube still of George Reeves' Superman, and I thought you made a credible Superman for that bit. Were you a comic book reader?
It's funny you asked that. I was when I was younger.
Sure.
I'm not as I've gotten older. I respect the hell out of them. I absolutely think it's an art form. I just don't I'm just not into it as much. I don't know, maybe it's just a product of age. But yeah, in the beginning, yes, I was growing up. Definitely Batman and Superman and the Fantastic Four.
Cool.
And I think those are the big ones. I wasn't a Wonder Woman fan or anything like that too much. I mean, as far, like I said, Fantastic Four, but that's about it. Yeah.
Okay. Well, again, I suggest people go to YouTube and check out your Superman bit because I don't even want to tip it. It was fantastic. And regarding the Batman movie, obviously everyone is still in the throes of the success of Avengers Endgame. But, maybe people kind of remember that Batman was a big deal. But, man, I looked up the numbers. The movie made $250 million domestic, $411 million worldwide. And now, granted, it was in the theaters for 25 weeks, which certainly, isn't the usual release life of a film in theaters these days. But that said, movies were like at least a fourth of what they cost now, and to make, $400 million worldwide, I remember this was a big, moment for the superhero genre kind of upping its game, and not only us nerds went to see the film, everybody went to see Batman.
Yeah, I think you make a good point about, everything's about timing. I mean, George Martin said about the Beatles, they were of their time, and timing is everything. But up to that point, there really hadn't been the Superman films with Christopher Reeve had done very well. And so now you had Batman, which people may not realize was the most expensive movie ever made at that point. And this was one of the things, you get very lucky occasionally in your career. And this one I got lucky with because it was the A-Team, Tim Burton, who was not Tim Burton at that point. Remember, Tim had only done 2 movies. He had done Pee-wee's Big Adventure and Beetlejuice. Yes. And that was it. And now he's handed the reins to Batman. And his concept, I think most of the success of everything really comes down to Tim Burton, because it was his vision to go darker. I knew he was going to do that, and it was his version. And people forget that, or they weren't around then, about how scared theater owners were of this Batman, that it was too dark. Their idea of Batman was the TV series. Sure. The Adam West TV series, which I detested. Interesting. The only thing I liked about it was to see who was playing the superheroes, but I hated the camp part of it. If you really loved Batman, you didn't like this campiness that was going on here. That wasn't for me. So I did not like the Batman TV series. I've never turned it on since then. I watched it for about a year until I really got turned off to it, but it just wasn't for me. Now, this was going another direction, and then you had Jack Nicholson. And then people also don't know, now they think it's very funny, Michael Keaton, but I remember at the time, thank God there wasn't social media back then. Here. Because I don't think Michael Keaton would have ever withstood, or Michael could have, the studio I don't think would have been able to withstand the vitriol that was heaped upon Michael Keaton when he was chosen to play Batman. Everybody was saying, "This is Mr. Mom. How is he our Batman?" They didn't know that John Peters also wanted Steve Martin or Bill Murray. They didn't know that part of it. Really? But yeah, true story.
Oh my God.
They were thinking different than, I'm telling you, everything is Tim. It's all Tim. Now, John and Peter Guber and them and Mark Canton, the head of the studio, they were geniuses at marketing. I mean, let's face facts. They forced the Prince songs into the movie. Tim didn't want those Prince songs in the movie.
Wow.
But, and they were forced down his throat because they had just had a super hit with Purple Rain, and Prince was the hottest thing on the planet. So, and Tim, like I said, Tim didn't have that kind of clout back then. So everything came. So I remember when the movie, I saw the first screening, and I was saying, boy, I don't know. I mean, I like it, but is this going to work for everybody? And there was a lot of hype, though. I mean, there was no question. There was excitement. There was great, but it's all Tim. All the credit goes to Tim. I mean, Michael will tell you the same thing. But Michael caught such shit.
Yes.
Michael, I mean, there was all over about Michael Keaton. Now, I had known Michael because we both started out as comics together.
Okay.
And I knew how good actor Michael was. And if you watch Beetlejuice, and more importantly, he had done a movie called Clean and Sober where he played a drug addict.
Yes.
And it's a terrific, and if you watch Michael, who's probably my favorite actor now, so if you saw him, you knew that Michael's so smart. He's so good. And we had the A-team. I mean, you had Jack Nicholson, and Jack Palance.
Yeah.
And you had all these really good people, and Billy D. Williams, and, there was a lot of good people in it. So I was, along for the ride, and I enjoyed every second of it.
Man, and I know you're a big classic Hollywood buff. And I wonder what it was like working with, these amazing stars like Jack Palance and, of course, Nicholson, and even the character actors like Pat Hingle.
Terrific. Just right. And see, I didn't have much interaction with Pat, with Hingle. And Jack Palance only worked the first couple of days.
Okay.
But I went to the set to watch him. We hung out for like a day with Palance telling stories. And the interesting thing about Palance was he talked about all the movies he never watched his movies.
Wow.
He said, I probably haven't seen but a handful of all the movies he had done. He was interesting there. He was a big boxing fan.
Oh, wow.
But Jack was the key. I mean, I was lucky enough that he took a liking to me, so he allowed me to drive to and from Pinewood with his driver a handful of times, and just the stories. He's one of the great raconteurs of all time, and he's a very, very funny man. And we all hung out together with some of. See, I was the guy who. It was just fun. I mean, it was great because I wasn't in it that much. I only think I worked 21 days after about 3 months.
Okay.
So I had a lot of time off to hang out in London, and but I had a great time. It was a great, you get lucky every now and then. In fact, I'm going back to London at the end of the month for the first time. Not the first time, it's about the second time since I did the movie. I haven't been back there, and I went back about 3 years ago to do to see some shows, but I haven't been back there, and. I'm going back because of a Yankee Red Sox series, but
oh, cool.
But it's right. It's like 2 days after the 30th anniversary. I'll be back there, so I was kind of hoping to do one of the Comic Cons back there, but nobody called me. Anyway, so I'd love to go. I'll do it in Paris too. Nobody called me.
That sucks.
So
well, I'm glad you're doing. I'm glad you're doing Connecticut and Mohegan Sun for terrific.
Oh, I'm looking forward to it a lot. I'm going to San Antonio and doing Fan Fest in next month.
Oh, excellent. Very cool.
14th through 16th of June, doing San Antonio Fan Fest, and I'm really looking to do Mitch's event, which I'm very much looking forward to at Mohegan Sun. And because what's interesting is I didn't know how, because I'd only done this one Hollywood show, and I didn't know how it would be.
Yeah.
And what I liked about it a lot was, basically I'm a people person anyway, but you really. The people there are so happy to see you.
Yeah.
There's a great sense of warmth. Now, remember, I'm not. This was not a Comic-Con. This was a Hollywood show, so I didn't have anybody dressed up, as Yoda or anything like that. But it was. I liked the warmth. I liked talking to people and saying, well, "What do you think of this?" And I really did enjoy that. I didn't realize how much I would enjoy that. What was interesting is, it's funny, is that I mentioned I was in London about 2-3 years ago, and I was outside the Tate Gallery. And outside the Tate Gallery, they had all these superhero figures, people standing. What do they call the guys who dress up and they stand there and you take your picture with you? What is there a word for that? You had like a Yoda, and you had
Sure.
all the, and you had a Batman.
Okay.
And he was standing, big guy. And of course, like any figure at Disneyland, they never talk, right? These people never talk. And anyway, so I'm just watching, and all the kids are up there, getting autographs and taking pictures with them. And I walk by, and the Batman guy sees me, and he totally breaks character and yells out, "Alexander Knox!" Well, everybody around him jumped about 10 feet because they weren't ready for him to talk. And they jumped out, and it was fun, so I took a picture with him. So I have a picture with me and the guy doing Batman. He asked me to take a selfie with him, which was kind of fun. So, but that was a cool moment when he saw me, and he kind of just freaked out. To see Batman freak out in the big costume was kind of fun.
That's excellent, man. Well, I'm guessing at the very least, if not cosplayers, then you're probably going to see a couple of Batman statues that I'm sure people will want to take pictures of you next to or whatever at Terrificon and certainly the San Antonio show too. That's great, man. And I'm interested in the filmmakers that you work with, because I appreciate you saying that a lot of Batman's success had to do with Tim Burton's vision. You've worked with some incredible directors. I mean, Good Morning Vietnam, you're working with Barry Levinson, a guy who really understands comedy, and of course, working with Robin Williams as well. And all your Ron Shelton movies as well, Bull Durham and Cobb and Blue. I know you're in Blue Chips as well. So yeah, I mean, you really have had the opportunity to work with some really cool filmmakers over the years.
I have been incredibly fortunate to work with really talented people. And even in the Hollywood Nights, Floyd Mutrick's Crazy
Yes.
Floyd was very helpful to me. He gave me my break, and you mentioned some pretty good films, and I've learned from all of them. And there's another filmmaker named Barry Primus. I did a little movie called Mistress that I'm very fond of.
Yes, indeed. I wanted to talk about Mistress. I love Mistress, man. It's one of my favorite little movies.
Mistress one gets lost. It's actually Tribeca's first film. So the cast in that we were talking about, it was with Danny Aiello the other night, and we were talking about the cast in that movie, which was the wonderful, wonderful Martin Landau and Jace Alexander and Robert De Niro and Dan Lowe and Christopher Walken and Harry Shearer and Gene Smart and Cheryl Lee Ralph and Laurie Metcalf played my wife. I mean,
Yes.
it was a staggering cast.
A great Eli Wallach as well.
Eli Wallach, may he rest in peace. You
Yeah.
bet. Great guy.
Yeah.
Absolutely just a wonderful human being. That was great. That's my best work as an actor, I've always thought, because Barry Primus really stayed on me hard, and he brought the best performance out of me, I think.
Man,
I think.
It's funny as hell, and absolutely has some dark moments as well. I mean, I don't want to tip it for people who haven't seen it. So worth checking out. And it's interesting that it was the first Tribeca film, because, yeah, De Niro's great in it. Everybody's great in it. Like you said, Jean Smart, I mean, she always seems so... Her performances seem so simple, and I think that's so deceptive and shows what kind of talent she is, because everything seems incredibly natural from her. And she has a great turn in particular in Mistress that I think, starts as just, Aiello's girlfriend, but you find the depth in her. And really, everybody, I think, really has great moments in Mistress.
Yes, it's interesting. Well, you can give some. The plot line is basically that a kind of a has-been producer trying to get back into the game finds this would-be auteur filmmaker who was, had some bad times, and that was my character. And he's trying to raise money for this movie, but the three people who will raise the money all want their mistress to play the lead in the picture. It was based on experiences that Barry Primus had, and it is funny. It's very funny. It does have dark moments. What was interesting about that whole situation is that film students love that movie.
I believe it.
Because that's much closer to what they will experience than, like, say, The Player or something like that, which is studio stuff. But, I mean, film students who are not, not going to go to film school, but independent filmmakers love that film because it's about an independent filmmaker.
Yeah. Yeah, and really, God, Landau's great as the producer, and like you said, a guy that's kind of past his prime and his big moment. Ernest Borgnine has a great cameo.
That's right, Ernest Borgnine. I forgot about that.
No, it's a terrific movie, man, and I hope that it's funny. I was kind of scouring around to see if it was streaming anywhere right now, because that's a great movie, man. I'm glad to hear it's one of your favorites as well. Hollywood Nights, man. I'll tell you, that's the first time I saw you. And I know that was your first big break. Fran Drescher, Tony Danza, Michelle Pfeiffer, all in this great period teen comedy, kind of in the same vein as American Graffiti. It was sold as American Graffiti meets Animal House, which is about right. Yeah, it makes sense, man. Well, and in this current unfortunate PC environment, I don't know if you can make that. I mean, because they still make raunchy teen comedies, but they're different, it seems, and I don't know it. I again having not seen it in a few years, I don't know if it would tick off any outrage list or anything like that. But it's one of my favorites, Volare, man. Nobody can fart Volare like New Bomb Turk.
Well, I don't. Your PC point may be well taken. I don't know. I don't know if there's anything. I mean, yeah, you have some raunchy jokes, but I don't know if there's anything that would nothing that jumps out at me right now. Now you had the doo-wop guys, but I don't think. I don't know. I don't think. But your point about PC and comedy is very well taken. There's no question about that. The more, things change. When I see, I look back at some routines that I did as a stand-up comic and jokes I told and wrote that I would never be able to do today. In fact, I was very fortunate. Joan Dangerfield, Rodney's widow, I just did a benefit for this college in L.A. that is putting a comedy program in, the Dangerfield Scholarship, and she found and sent me the first batch of jokes that I had written for Rodney in 1976. And it's unbelievable. So I remember him, and then I looked down the list. I didn't remember the jokes too well. Some of them I did. But there's a couple of them there. There's no way in hell I could do a couple of ethnic jokes or some other stuff that I would never, nobody would do it nowadays.
Sure.
Even if they were funny, they were just like, they were of their time. Again, timing.
What was it like writing for Rodney? I wanted to ask about writing for the Academy Awards in particular, because I read about that. But tell me about working with Rodney.
He was the greatest. Rodney was the greatest character in the world. Rodney was a comedic mind, a great comedic mind, one of the great comic writers. When you talk about the great comic writers of that period, you usually think Neil Simon and Woody Allen, Larry Gelbart, Mel Brooks. Rodney should fall in there because what he was doing with that art form, Woody Allen loved Rodney. What he was doing with that art form, because Rodney went from being a monologist, believe it or not. His early stuff, if you finds an album called The Loser, he's doing storytelling. He's a great storyteller. But then he got into the no respect thing, which he took from The Godfather, because The Godfather was all about getting respect. And so he started saying, I get no respect. And then he started doing the bang, 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 one-liners. And he found a niche. And one-liners are about the toughest thing in the world to write because they have to have a beginning, middle, and an end. There's a setup and a punchline, and you're telling a story in one line. So it's incredibly difficult. Now, what was easier was writing for the character, the Rodney Dangerfield character, because it was already so preset. The lovable loser, the guy who gets no respect, he has a trouble with his wife, trouble with his sex life. So that is already set up. That comes with the territory. So that part was okay. It was easy. And he was brilliant. He was just brilliant, and a big partier. And he brought me out to California. Gave me a big leg up at. He brought me to the Tonight Show, to see him perform, and he introduced me to the Comedy Store. So I got to be able to get up the ladder there. And I am forever beholden to the great Rodney Dangerfield. I mean, he was just something.
That's awesome, man. And you mentioned, that one-liners are telling a very brief story. I know you're very much into good storytelling, and it was a hallmark for a couple specials you did, Assume the Position. I love those things, man. And you're talking to students and telling real history stories and talking about Israel Bissell as opposed to Paul Revere and correcting some of the facts of history. And as you point out, both in the special and I've heard you say it elsewhere, quoting from the great movie The Man Who Shot Liberty Valance. When the legend is bigger than the truth, you print the legend. And you were there to kind of set the record straight on a few things in a very funny way. Those are great specials, man.
The actual quote is, when the legend becomes fact, print the legend.
Fair enough.
And it's very true. I mean, that's historical. I mean, the whole idea of history being pop culture is true. I mean, we will go down, never let the facts get in the way of a good story. That's the whole, Napoleon's line, history would be a wonderful thing if only it was true. There's great, there's great thing. And even today in sports, I do a sports podcast called The Sports Reporter sometimes with Mike Lupica and Bob Ryan and Mitch Albom. And I went off on this whole thing about, Bill Buckner costing the Red Sox the World Series, which is ridiculous. I mean, it was Game 6. The game was already tied. There was no positive they were ever going to win that game in extra innings, and it was Game 6 to begin with.
Yeah.
They had a 4-run, 3-run lead in Game 7 and lost. I mean, that's what happens. They think, oh, this lost it. No, it didn't. No, it didn't. But people remember that. It's the same thing.
I'm glad to hear you're still podcasting, because I was really enjoying your CBS podcast that you were doing for a while.
So was I. What
the hell? I mean, I know they got, it's funny. I work for what was CBS Radio, and now it's Entercom Radio. They bought it. I assume that's what kind of pulled the plug on a lot of those podcasts, because funny as hell, man. You were an innocuous thing you told was a great story about Glenn Ford, and it absolutely killed me, because Glenn Ford's one of those nerd icons because he played Jonathan Kent in the Christopher Reeve Superman movie, and for those 10 minutes he's on screen, everyone is just like, he's the greatest Jonathan Kent, from ever, and it was great to hear about how cheap he was and how it affected his movie career.
I love doing the podcast. I was sorry to see it go. I'm happy that they invite me on this other one. Uh-huh. There's a chance we might resurrect it.
Good.
Because there's a chance about that when I get back to. I'm in New York for about 5-6 weeks. When I get back to LA, I'll give it a shot maybe. But meanwhile, I'm enjoying filling in for these guys on sports with because they're great. You're talking about 3 pretty great writers with Bob Ryan, Mitch Albom, and Mike Lupica. These guys are smart.
Oh yeah.
So I enjoy that.
Well, I'm a sports radio veteran. I did it for 16 years in radio in Chicago here, and no, man, and with that in mind, my prime years were the 90s, and loved Arliss, man. Great show, and glad it's still on demand through HBO. Seriously, man, terrific cast. Sandra Oh, Michael Boatman, Jim Turner. Really, everyone came to play. You'll forgive the metaphor. But I really felt as each season progressed, the show just got better.
I would agree. That's something you have to, usually you have to give a show at least a year. Things get better. They should get better. You should get better. Now, unless you're not coming out of character. And also the show got darker,
yes.
Which I liked.
Yes.
So that was me. And you talk about talent. We had, I don't know how many Oscars. We had about a half a dozen Oscar winners, about 100 Emmy winners on the show. I mean, Ed Asner and God knows how Joe Bologna, the Oscar nominee, and we had so many people on. It was great. We had James Coburn's last performance was on Arliss.
Wow.
It was a great time. It was a great show. I was very fortunate to do it. I loved every second. Very hard work, but it was the best time of my life.
I'm glad you mentioned Ed Asner, because I was going to say my 3 favorite Arliss episodes were his episode as the play-by-play baseball guy that is suffering from Alzheimer's, and having grown up in Chicago with Harry Carey and Jack Brickhouse, who were terrific till the end, and then working in sports radio and getting to know Ernie Harwell and Vin Scully, obviously. I thought Ed really assumed the great role as a great play-by-play man, and that was an effective and kind of bittersweet episode.
Oh, it makes me cry.
Yeah,
I tear up every time I see it. I absolutely do. Now, how that came about was, it was never about sports to me. It was about characters in the world of sports.
Sure.
Say sports. I mean, Fran Lebowitz, the acerbic writer, once came up to me and said, she was chain smoking, and said, "I hate sports, but I love your show." And I said, because it's not about sports, it's about characters in the world of sports. That's totally different. The reason most sports movies fail, Ron Shelton and I have often talked about that, is because they're told from the point of view of the fan. And the fan only cares about one thing. Does the team win or lose?
Yeah.
That's all the fan cares about. But like Ron was a ball player, and he knew what the point of view of the second baseman was, which was, I'm trying to keep my job. And so when you deal with characters, I mean, there's no big games. Like Arliss was never about a big game. It was nothing like that. It was about a situation. It was about a guy running a business. My dad ran a business. We had a family business. I was more interested in the guy selling peanuts. I was more interested in the woman who was the choreographer of the Laker girls. I was interested in the guy who was what happened was I heard about Chuck Thompson, who I believe was going blind at the time from Orioles. And I realized we were losing all of these great old-time announcers. And my father-in-law had died of Alzheimer's, so I lived through this. So I thought this was a really good idea for an episode. And so that's how that came about. So I knew that world a little bit. And it wasn't like a TV series. But now the other thing, too, about Arliss is it was always funny. I mean, it was always a really good laugh at Arliss. And we didn't make the athletes do anything they weren't capable of doing. They were there for texture. It was like filling them in. It was all about who was available. That was all about availability.
Okay.
But they never had to carry plot.
Sure.
You can't ask them to carry plot. They were there for texture. But it was interesting to see when we looked at the rap reel from some of these things, that watching that show, it is a time capsule of the period. Because you see all the big athletes of the time. Because we had just about everybody on. We had just about everybody over that 7-year period.
I can't believe it was 7 years. Yeah, man. And my two other favorite episodes, the one where Jim Turner, Kirby, is dating Krista Allen. And she's looking for gigs, and he's trying to help her out. And they combine, calendar girls with fly fishing. And
bass. That was a big. For some reason, we were watching HBO, ESPN. I'm going, what is the big deal with bass fishing? Rich Eisen was in that show.
Oh, that's cool. Yeah, I had forgotten that.
And he caught some grief from his friends when he was working at ESPN because we were making fun of bass fishing without making, and that was a big sponsor of this.
And the other one that I love, I always love a good pot joke, but when the NBA players are waiting for their weed man and using the Earth, Wind, and Fire song September, and they're all ridiculously happy at the beginning of the season because they're getting their weed connection for the year. And it's just this great circle of NBA, not really actors being NBA players, all very happy that the weed man is there. And I thought that was a great episode.
We used September a couple of times. Now, when we went online, when we started streaming in September, I had to lose a lot of songs from clearances. They never cleared them. I haven't seen that episode, so I don't know if it's actually on there or they replaced it. There's a couple of them I had to replace because back then there was no such thing as streaming, so you never had music rights.
Right.
So we had to go back and some of them we actually got stuff for. Some of them we didn't because of prices and stuff like that. But I used a lot of music. I used a lot of. One of my favorites is always the one with a guy named Ronnie Crandall, who is Arliss's first client, who is in his last shot for the Hall of Fame, and he's up for the Hall of Fame vote, and he gets arrested on a domestic abuse charge by his second wife, who's an alcoholic, and his first wife comes to his aid saying that he was with me that night, and that they were trying to get back together, and they didn't want to, get adultery involved in this. So, and it gets out, and he gets elected to the Hall of Fame, and Arliss finds out that the wife was lying, and that she said she'd rather have her son Ronnie Jr. be the son of a Hall of Famer than the son of a felon.
Wow.
And I love that episode because it was dark. It had a great twist. Because that's real to me. I liked them when they were real, when they were dark. I really did.
Yeah, man. And I remember one too where a football player is cheating on another football player, and it was like a running back or a wide receiver and his guard or what, a guy that would protect him, and he doesn't move. So the guy that's cheating on him gets the shit kicked out of him, and it's all to Glenn Campbell's Wichita lineman is there on the line. And I thought a great use of music and a great joke.
Well, again, I don't know if that's thank you, but I don't know if that is actually on the replays. I don't know. Because they had to replace a lot of music.
Yeah, man. Go ahead. Excuse me.
No, they had to replace it, but that's what we would do. I would use a lot of songs like that for that reason.
No, funny stuff, man. And it's a shame. And believe me, a lot of poignant television moments because of streaming and stuff have had to take out, pop songs and stuff. It is a different world. And I was wondering, and I'm glad to hear that you're thinking about maybe bringing back your entertainment podcast as well. And by the way, I know you're a huge sports fan, so I'm glad you do get the chance to scratch the sports itch and the podcast itch with the sports reporters. But what's a good platform for you in today's multimedia, digital, and over-the-air and cable world? What are you looking for other things to do? Where do you want to go with everything?
Oh well, I'm right now. I'm starting to work on a book, but I pretty much enjoy, you get to a certain age and
Sure.
they're not, jumping out for you. Whoever pays me, pretty much. I've done pretty well, and I'm enjoying my life, and I have 2 dogs that are getting elderly now, and I don't know how much time I've got left with them, which I'm enjoying, and I want to enjoy as much as I can, and. I'm working on a baseball book now.
Cool.
And, I would like to do another assume the position for sure. I have the material to do that. That's the thing. I would like to do that, but you got to get somebody to bankroll it. So that's what that is.
Have you had meetings? Have you talked to any of these new, Hulu or Netflix?
We have, and everybody's always interested, and then somehow it just doesn't happen.
I'm hip. Yeah. I understand that too. Well, and again, that's why I hope you come back to the podcast, because again, I think you were, turning out great conversations, sometimes sports, lots of entertainment conversations as well. I wanted to ask if you got a quick, I don't want to take too much of your time, but I wanted to know about, first of all, I really love your writing for the Oscars, but more importantly, your rules as an Academy member for voting for the Oscars. And I was wondering if you could rattle off some of those, because I think they're great.
Oh, well, okay, so I have certain guidelines that I vote for. You have to remember that the Academy Awards is a great honor. However, it is also a business. And it is, in certain ways, it's the world's greatest trade show. Tommy Lee Jones and I used to talk about this all the time. He called it the world's greatest trade show, and he's not wrong. So those things are worth money. It's just a business. Credits give you credibility.
Sure.
So that said, I have certain guidelines when I am going to. When you get an Academy, as an actor, if you get an Academy Award nomination, you're going to have work, which means you're going to have hospitalization. Now, you may not be a superstar. You may not become a big box office star, but you're going to get work. You'll be working the rest of your life, more than likely. You may be in TV and film, but you're going to work, which means hospitalization for your family, which means you'll have a good pension, which, this is reality.
Sure.
This is what it means. That said, first and foremost, I vote for my friends. Why would I want my friends? Now, let's understand something right off the bat. In order to get an Oscar nomination, you have to be pretty good.
Well, yeah.
You have to be at least good. I think we'll all agree to that. You have to be good. So it's not like I'm voting for a friend who did, did some stupid thing. No, they're all quality stuff. They wouldn't be up there if they weren't.
Sure.
So I'll vote for my friends, number one, because I want my friends to do well in business. I'm sorry. That's just reality. That said, also, I will never vote for a kid. I do not vote for kids under any circumstances. Any circumstances. Because, again, this is a profession. And I want professionals. They deserve the honor. A lot of people who have been in cattle calls for 20, 30 years, who have studied for 20, 30 years, I want them getting the opportunity to have that, recognition and that hospitalization and what goes with it, rather than some 13-year-old kid who they say, he was so good. He's basically, he's not acting. I mean, it's like he's giving a performance that the director will say, but no, under no circumstances, zero. I cannot think of a circumstance. Only if it was my kid, maybe. I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure under any circumstances. And if it's Jodie Foster, well, then when she grows up to be Jodie Foster, I'll vote for her then. And I did.
Well,
So those are my 2 big rules. Vote for my friends first. And then, and no kids.
That's awesome.
Those are my first 2 rules. Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, regarding Jodie Foster, also maybe no first timers. Wasn't that?
Well, see, here's the difference. No first timers. If it's yes, I mean, as a rule, that would be number 3 probably. Yes, no first timers. I'm reminded of the great Bill Parcells line. when he was talking about some high draft quarterback, and he said, "Can he win a few games first before we put him in the Hall of Fame?"
Yeah, absolutely, man.
And that's the way I feel about actors, too. I mean, they'll give a great first time out. Okay, let me see it a second time. Guy gets up and hits a home run first at bat. God bless him. But let me see the second at bat. You know, let him win a few games before we put him in the Hall of Fame. Now, the other thing is, unlike some people who will say it's not a Lifetime Achievement Award, it is absolutely a Lifetime Achievement Award. When the first line of your obituary is written the moment you win that award, that's the Lifetime Achievement Award.
Yeah.
Because I have a friend who writes obituaries for the New York Times. And I say, what's the criteria in the first line? He goes, what's the most famous achievement? So as soon as you win an Academy Award, they'd say, Joe Blow, Academy Award winner, 19 so-and-so, died yesterday. Well, that's a lifetime. How much more of a Lifetime Achievement Award do you want than that if that's the first line of your obituary?
I'm reminded of that Ernest Borgnine scene in Mistress, where clearly Ernest Borgnine would have no part in the movie that your character's making. But of course, Martin Landau's like, he won an Oscar. We got to get him. And Red Buttons is another example of that. It's like, you think of Red Buttons' career, and it's like, he did win an Oscar. So I get it.
Yeah, Red Buttons is a good actor. Very good actor.
Better actor than a stand-up, in my opinion. I got it.
Well, no. Yeah,
Go for it.
Hold on there. There was nobody better at a roast than Red Buttons. He never had a dinner. He had this hook where these guys never had a dinner.
Yes.
And he would break down the house every time. I saw him one time. They used to have this thing in L.A. called the Big Brothers Dinner, and it was all the top people, and they would give away these big prizes, and it would be like $1,000 a head to go to this thing, and they would have a lineup of all young comics and comics who would perform. And I remember Gilbert coming on, Sam Kinison, Dice Clay. Now, when you had Gilbert, Sam Kinison, and Dice Clay in a row at their prime, that was tough to follow.
Sure.
I mean, you were talking really raunchy, really filthy, really outrageous, really edgy. And Red Buttons would come on afterwards and be clean. And within 2 minutes, you forgot there was anybody else ever on stage. I mean, he was great. He would say, Yasser Arafat, a man who would give you the shirt off his head. He never had a dinner. He would have all these people. I mean, Red Buttons was there was nobody better at that stuff. Nobody.
All right, fair enough, man. I like it. That's awesome. You see, this is the kind of, we should, if we had more time, I would say that we get into some sports discussions and stuff. I'm a big boxing guy. I covered boxing for 16 years, and I'm just getting back into covering boxing again.
We had our first year, about our fifth episode, we had, at that time, pretty boy Floyd Mayweather. He just got off of the Olympics, and he was on our list. So Floyd and I have always had a great relationship.
That's cool. I know De La Hoya did the show as well.
Many times. De La Hoya did it a few times. Lennox Lewis did it.
Did you have Tyson?
No, we never had Tyson.
Okay.
We never had Ali. We had Evander Holyfield.
That's awesome. I love Evander. Great guy. Tremendous guy.
Roy Jones was on a couple of times. He was great.
Yes, that's
Roy,
right.
Smart guy. Really smart. I loved having Roy Jones on.
That's cool. Your love of Hollywood. Have you been a guest host on Turner Classic Movies?
Yes.
Okay. That's cool. Like, do you remember what movies you picked?
Yes, I picked three pretty esoteric movies because everybody takes Casablanca.
Well, yeah.
I took a movie. I love westerns, so I took one of my favorite westerns is The Big Country, with Gregory Peck and Charlton Heston and Burl Ives, who won an Oscar for that movie. Very few times you see Tony win an Oscar for a western.
Sure.
That movie. I took my favorite comedy of all time, which is To Be or Not to Be, with Jack Benny and Carol Lombard.
Lubitsch, absolutely, man. Yeah.
And I took a really off the wall one from the early 70s, a satire on the world of beauty pageants called Smile, that Michael Ritchie had directed right after he'd done Bad News Bears and The Candidate. And it's a really movie that's of its time, but it's out there. And I thought this one is, if you want to see what America was like in the early 70s and pop culture and everything, this was a movie. Those were the three movies I took.
That's cool, man. No, and I've seen Smile. That's awesome. And I haven't seen Big Country, but yeah, I'm a huge to be or not to be fan. It's like everyone, obviously the great joke about Jack Benny was The Horn Blows at Midnight. But it's like, yeah, guess what? He actually made a really great movie with Ernest Lubitsch and everything, to be or not to be. And I don't see, I love Mel Brooks, but I got to tell you, I'm not a big fan of his remake.
Yeah, well, it's a remake.
Yeah. Understood, man. Hey, real pleasure to meet you and get the chance to talk to you. As I said, longtime fan, and looking forward to hopefully having you back on a more regular basis from a podcasting standpoint. But regardless, take the victory lap this year for the 30th anniversary of Batman and everything else you do, Robert Wuhl. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Thanks a lot.
Awesome, man. That was terrific. That's Robert Wuhl. His podcast was called Ipso Facto, and it ran until 2017, and I thought it was terrific. Like I said, that was not faint praise. I really enjoyed in-depth conversations and interviews that he did. Among them, Todd McFarlane, believe it or not, kind of feeding into not only the comic book side of us, but also the baseball side, and then the baseball collector that Todd is. And that was an interesting conversation. They're great. Really, really funny conversations. Ipso Facto. And you can find it on iTunes and the various podcasting platforms. I'm really glad that the episodes are still available for you to check out. Really looking forward to seeing Robert Wuhl at Terrificon, along with Val Kilmer and Billy D. Williams. That's going to be an incredible panel. I hope they all, man, if I were them, I'd do three separate panels, because obviously all of them could have incredible conversations. Geez, Val Kilmer, I've loved him since Real Genius. I mean, Billy D. Yes, of course, Harvey Dent. Yes, of course, Lando. Of course. But I got to tell you, man, I loved him in the 70s when I was a little kid. And when he was doing things like the great Negro League Baseball movie, Big O Long and the All-Stars. I mean, I can't tell you. That was the first thing I said to him when I met him. I'm like, look, man, I love Lando, but Big O Long, him and James Earl Jones and Richard Pryor, and the actor whose name I always forget, who played Morris Day in Animal House, Morris Day and the Knights, he's in the movie. Great movie. Really, really funny movie. And totally worth seeing, by the way. You got to see it. Great 70s movie. And, of course, Mahogany. I mean, that's the thing. Billy D was the man. Even the Schlitz Malt Liquor Bowl commercials. I mean, he was the king of cool. He was the Idris Elba of the 70s. No question. And, of course, that's why he was Lando. Anyway, really excited about Terrificon coming up at the end of August. I hope to see you out there. I'm really, really relieved that I am healthy enough to attend Terrificon this year with the slate of comic creators and celebrity guests that they've got coming up. It's going to be a great show. And thank you, Mitch Hallock, for helping me make the Robert Wuhl thing happen. That was amazing. So thanks a lot for listening to today's Word Balloon. And really, really excited about all the content that I'm happy to share with you here at wordballoon.com. Also, of course, check out the back catalog. Check out the archive. I've got a lot of great episodes, over 800 strong, here at wordballoon.com. And, they're available on iTunes, all the podcasting platforms. And do yourself a favor, dive in. Spotify, one of our new homes at Word Balloon. How about that? So pretty neat stuff. And again, thank you as always for your time and attention. Until next time, Word Balloon is a copyright feature of Shaky Productions. Copyright 2019.